abstract essay where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's a licensed psychologist specializing in marriage retreats, brain mapping, and neurofeedback. No other than Dr. David Helfand.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for the invite.
Welcome, Dr. David on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. So, as you said, I'm a licensed psychologist. I've been working with couples for a little less than 10 years now. Started my training in the field of neuroscience, specifically neurofeedback and brain mapping, and eventually discovered that just the individual approach, as many therapeutic approaches are, was missing a lot. And I broadened myself out to doing some couples work. In the pandemic, couples therapy just exploded and took off, and that's been my primary focus ever since.
Mr. David or Dr. David, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. And today let's talk about the neuroscience behind a happy marriage. So tell us, behind the cliche, what's actually happening in our brains when we first fall in love? Is it chemistry, just a metaphor, or it's just the real chemical recipe?
So there's a lot that goes on during the infatuation period, what we call falling in love typically. Your brain is flooded with multiple hormones, endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine. So just to break those down for a moment, endorphins comes from endogenous morphine, endogenous meaning made inside your body, morphine, the painkiller. So you fall in love, you're in that infatuation, you've got a natural painkiller running through you. Nothing can hurt you, harm you, touch you. You can feel invincible in that matter. Dopamine is that reinforcement hormone. So, it feels good. You're with someone. Your brain says, hey, I want more of them. Keep moving towards them in that sense. And then oxytocin is often known as the hug hormone or the love hormone. And it's a bonding hormone. It connects you with somebody as well. And interestingly, during that infatuation period, people often are high, basically. You've got all these drugs coursing through your system. And, one of the ways that I've heard this expressed is that infatuation period is when you don't see your partner's flaws. But that true love is when you see their flaws and you still accept them for who they are.
Definitely. We often hear about honeymoon phase ending. From a neuroscientific perspective, what is the actual chemical shift that occurs as a passionate love evolves in a long-term attachment?
Yeah. So eventually those drugs wear off, just like any drug. If you were to take a shot of whiskey every day, at some point your tolerance goes up, the effect of it wears off, and you either need more of it or you decide, okay, I'm kind of done. I'm going to move on to something else. That happens with the hormones in your brain too, that at a certain point, your brain kind of balances out. And also the blindfold you're wearing for those flaws your partner may have actually start to fade away as well, and you see them a little more clear-eyed, if you will. There's some interesting research too that what initially attracts us to people is sometimes later in the relationship what we have issues with. So for example, you find someone who's adventurous and spontaneous and you go, oh, I love that they bring this sense of adventure into my life. And then after a couple years, you're like, you can't make plans with them. They won't stick to a schedule. They're always changing their mind, and that spontaneity drives you crazy. So there's a shift that happens later on when the rose-colored glasses, so to speak, fade away.
Yes, definitely. The term wired for connection is used a lot. What specific brain structures and systems are primarily involved in building and maintaining a secure marital bond?
Well, that's a very complicated answer because some of it is neurological in that sense. Some of it is also based on attachment principles, which again is rooted in some neurology as well. There'd be lots of ways to answer that question. Let's take a let's take a couple lenses here, maybe. So, in general, we are driven to be a herd species. We want a community. We want people around us. And in fact, the research on longevity, on the human lifespan, shows that the community and the social connections you have is a better indicator of your overall longevity, how many years you'll be on this planet, than almost anything else. Then, if you smoke cigarettes, then your nutrition, then your sleep habits, all of these are important, but the research shows that your connections, your social connections, are actually more important. And so we've sort of evolved then to be connected, to want to connect with people, to find people that we feel like make us better in some ways. That's in a perfect world, though. And as we know, our neurology and our evolution is imperfect. So this is where the answer to your question gets a little more complex. For example, if you grew up with an alcoholic parent and your attachment is what we call maybe an anxious or avoidant attachment or very disorganized, then there's a part of you, there's a part of your system that could do one of two things. It could say, oh, this person's drinking alcohol, they're not safe to be around. And so you might discredit somebody who maybe drinks very responsibly, but the alarm bells are going off in your nervous system to say, no, we can't trust anyone that has alcohol. The flip side of that is you might be actually attracted to people that share some of those characteristics of your parents, because what's called repetition compulsion, where you're trying to subconsciously present yourself with struggles that you've had historically as a way to try to create mastery, create a sense of accomplishment and overcoming the challenge. And so a lot of times what people come into a retreat with is these questions of, am I really compatible with my spouse? Did I marry them for the right reasons? Was I caught up in some old psychology of my past? And those are really big questions. And unfortunately, there's not an easy answer. It requires a deep dive into the history, your history, the relationship history, your insecurities. There's a lot more information that's needed.
How does being in a committed, happy relationship physically change the structure and function of the brain over time, Mr. David?
There are lots of ways that happens. So let's take one example. In general, a healthy relationship should be collaborative, and you should be working to make each other the best version of yourselves. And when marriage is done right, we often get to heal our old wounds through the marital relationship. One of the ways this happens is if you're someone who's experienced a lot of trauma, parts of your limbic system, your amygdala in particular, which is a deeper structure, set of structures in your brain, this area, your amygdala, is a threat detection. And so it's responsible for surveying the data coming in from the world and figuring out, is there a threat here? Is this something I need to pay attention to? And if you've had trauma, that detector can be very sensitive to the point where there might be just a very mundane moment that your partner rolls their eyes or makes a joke at your expense, and your system goes, warning, warning, they're not safe. You need to fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then there's more of that response as well. When in reality, it's not actually a threat. So in a healthy relationship, you should be learning to co-regulate with each other, where ideally that threat detection suggests there's an issue, and together you're able to talk about it, to process it, to comfort each other, which eventually calms your amygdala, calms your, again, threat detection. It's going to lower blood pressure. It's going to improve blood flow through your body. It's going to help with chronic pain in that case as well, because a lot of pain and muscle tension has to do with a hyperarousal, too much sympathetic activity as opposed to parasympathetic in your nervous system. So the short answer to your question is that co-regulating rebalances your nervous system. And if you and your partner can be a positive influence in each other, it really is quite synergistic.
The neurobiology of conflict and repair. During the heated argument, it feels like we lose our minds. What are the neuroscience behind this? Specifically, what's the role of the brain and the cortex or the brain itself when a couple fights?
So I like to talk about the 90-10 principle with couples, that 90% of the reason you feel a strong emotion is historically rooted and only 10% is contemporary. And so what that means is that if you're having a conversation with your partner and one of you gets upset, turns their back and leaves the room, that's not a nice thing to do. But if you get so enraged with your partner, there's something else going on. If when they turn their back and leave, you felt abandoned and unloved and disregarded and belittled and disrespected and unwanted, all these other things, there's probably some history there. And so, again, this is a case where your amygdala, your limbic system has hijacked your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, around the forehead, is involved in executive functioning. It's involved in higher emotional awareness and impulse control. And the way that your nervous system is designed is that if there is a threat to your safety, and emotional safety counts, then you don't want your prefrontal lobe reacting. You want deeper innate structures in your nervous system trying to keep you safe. So for example, if you walk out into a crosswalk and there's a bus coming, you don't really want to take the time thinking, well, it's a very large vehicle. I wonder what my face is going to look like in a half a second. You just want your system to respond. You jump back, and then you deal with the response after the fact. The issue, though, is that when you are perceiving your partner as a threat of that nature, you no longer see them as a loving companion. Your nervous system perceives them as someone who is a threat. So depending on your trauma history, depending on your propensity and resiliency for relaxation, there's different strategies you might employ in that case. So, for some people, just some deep breathing works really well to kind of ground themselves. Some people, journal to sort of process the thoughts. Other people might go work out or go for a walk or spend time in nature. But basically, you need to get out of your limbic function and get your cortex back online so you see somebody as that person you fell in love with and give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not actually trying to hurt you. Now, of course, I'm not talking about domestic violence situations. That's a whole other category. If you are, in fact, in an unsafe situation, that needs to be attended to. I'm talking about when it's misperceived and the threat is really exaggerated based on your nervous system's prior history.
Interesting, Mr. David. And what does a neural hijacking look like in a marital argument? And what is the most effective science backed strategies for de escalating it?
So there's a couple options there. An escalation or a hijacking is usually one of those like threats. So somebody says, I want a divorce. We're effing done. I'm done with this. Think of it like for those people that have kids, when your kid says, I hate you, you're the worst parent in the world. They don't really mean that. They've just been hijacked and they don't even have the frontal lobe development to begin with. But their system's been hijacked because they're upset with you. And we kind of understand that with kids. It's a normal response. We don't really give proper credit or space for adults to have a similar reaction, even though a lot of us do. Again, this is not a logical decision to say, I hate you and I want a divorce. It's an emotional one, usually coming from a place of feeling threatened or insecure or attacked, or whatever word you want to use. And so at that point where the limbic system has taken over, You just need to give it time. The half-life of adrenaline is about 5 minutes. And so if you can at least take a break for 5 to 10 minutes, and then whoever was the one that is feeling overwhelmed and hyper emotional in that case, they need to go do something that's actually self-soothing. And this is one of the common mistakes that I see with couples is that, okay, they go take a break and then their partner goes and checks their work emails, or they watch a sports game, or they play a game on their phone. These activities don't actually create a parasympathetic response. They don't create a relaxation response. If I were to watch your blood pressure while you're playing a game on your phone, it's not usually going down because you're engaged in something that is activating. Generally, sports, people get very activated as well. Work emails, the same. So when you take that break and you go to reset your nervous system, you have to find an activity that's actually relaxing. So this is something like meditation, journaling, walking in nature, having a cup of tea, maybe just sitting in a quiet room, staring at the wall for 10 minutes. So something to give your cortex and your frontal lobe in particular a chance to come back online is the key there. That limbic system function, that fight or flight, et cetera, again, is designed to deal with a wild animal who's about to hurt you, as an example. So if you're perceiving your partner as a snarling lion in the Serengeti, that conversation's not going to go well like 100% of the time. So you need to wait until you have all those faculties back and you can perceive the situation, perceive your partner in at least a more favorable light and not like a threatening animal.
Mr. David, as a licensed psychologist, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Personally, professionally?
Yes, professionally.
So Marriage Quest, this company was started by my parents almost 25, 30 years ago. And they've retired. And so I've taken it over. I've been doing this work for, like I said, almost 10 years. And my hope is to start having a training model where I can teach people how can they help couples in a few days rather than what's usually the case is years of couples therapy, or at least months of couples therapy. And I'm really excited that I've been collecting data for the last year on this approach. We're getting ready to publish an article in the next few months, hopefully before the end of the year. Might take a little bit longer, but I'm really excited to start getting the word out that couples don't have to be suffering for months or years, that there really is a way to get quick results and hopefully lasting results. The longitudinal data is going to take a little longer. But I'm really excited to show people that this is a possibility. And in my experience, no one has ever taught how to be married. So it makes sense that the divorce rate, at least in the US in general, is so high because no one has ever given a chance at success here. And you could walk into Home Depot and buy all the tools in the building. Doesn't mean you can build a house. So just because you get married doesn't mean you're going to be successful. And I really want to give people the chance. And yeah, I guess that's the goal.
Looking forward for more success, Mr. David, and good luck to your goals.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Well, if you want to be like me professionally, then find someone who knows more than you and ask a ton of questions and listen, of course, too. If you want to be like the couples that I'm working with, then learn what you don't know, because again, no one is taught how to be married. And if you want to give your marriage a fighting chance, pick up a book that interests you, check out our blog. If you're ready for professional help, reach out. I'm happy to help anyone who's ready for that. Some people aren't ready for a retreat, and there's a lot of good info out there just to start the process.
Thank you for that advice, Mr. David or Dr. David. Thank you, thank you. And we often hear that men and women have different brains. In the context of marriage, are neurological pathways to happiness and connection fundamentally different or more similar than we think?
It's both. So yes, it's true that men and women have different hormones. We have different lived experiences in society. We have somewhat different wiring because of those reasons. I'm someone who puts a little bit more credence into nurture than nature, if you know the age old debate. However, also the development of men and women is different as well. So, the way that we process emotions develops at different times. The way that the way that our sexuality changes as men and women age. Obviously, menopause is something that men don't go through, and women do have to go through in many cases, most cases. Um, so there are some differences there. However, the skills and the process that men and women use is often the same. The way that you communicate with each other, the advisable way to communicate with each other, the way that it's recommended to work on emotional intelligence. There's a lot of similarities with those, although there are some differences as well. The differences don't tend to be male female. It tends to be more about your personality, your lived experience. So, a lot of overlap, although there are some unique considerations.
Well, interesting, Mr. David or Dr. David. For couples who feels they are grown distant, is it possible to rewire their relationship back to a place of connection and excitement?
Absolutely. So, again, no one's ever taught how to be married. And the research generally shows that if you have had some spark and chemistry early in your relationship, there are ways to re spark and reconnect with your partner. And for example, a lot of the formula that's worked early in a relationship still works. Couples just aren't doing it. So, if you used to go on a date with your partner and just talk and spend time together, and that's part of what connected you with each other early in the relationship, then great. There's no reason that you have to reinvent the wheel. Oftentimes what happens is people get set in their careers, they have kids, they have aging parents, life gets more complicated, and so they're just not spending the time with each other anymore. So, I would encourage people to go back and think, like, how did we used to spend our time together? What were we doing in the beginning of our relationship that felt like it laid a foundation? Because if you can, those are called peak experiences. If you can identify those peak experiences, and if you can find a way to bring them back, then that's often more than half the battle right there. Now, of course, if you've had issues and struggles and resentments have built up, you also need to work on working through those and getting closure. But like I said, part of the formula is just, if you know what worked originally, bring that back.
Bring that back and rekindle those memories. And Mr. David or Dr. David, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, as well as my love letters, movie 101 review, and music 101. And my baby podcast, Law 101, mental health 101, and Bible verses 101. And science 101 and sex 101 in its second season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Dr. David, if you could give one piece of recommendation of brain based advice to every couple seeking a happier marriage, what would it be?
Well, there's so many. The one that comes to mind at the moment, though, is get good sleep. Sleep is one of the best indicators of overall nervous system health and function. It allows your frontal lobe to be online and be as healthy as possible, allows you to connect with your partner as well. So if you're getting poor sleep, you're going to personally feel terrible, and also you're not going to show up in your relationship in the right way. So sleep is vital.
Sleep, sleep, sleep. 8 hours a day. Is it, Dr. David?
So it's really more about the quality of sleep than the quantity. Some people get 9 hours and it's terrible quality. Some people get 7 hours and it's great quality. So it's hard to put a quantity number on it. The research generally shows 7 to 9 for adults is ideal. Of course, that's the bell curve and the average. But I would really think about quality. If you wake up and you're still tired, or you require caffeine to start your day, there is something wrong with the quality of your sleep.
Dr. David Helfand, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, of course. So, first of all, Daniel, thank you for the invite. This was a great conversation. And if people are interested in the couples retreat, you can check out the website, marriagequest.org. I always offer a free consultation to anyone before they sign up. I like to speak to both spouses as well. And if you're not ready for the commitment of the intensive retreat, check out the blog. There's lots of free info. You can just get some little tips and tricks along the way.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. David Helfand. If you support him, for sure more empowering marriage or fulfilled marriage will rise. So, Dr. David, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon.